what we heard from Vivek is a call to action, a rallying cry to solve real problems. Over the last couple of days, we've talked about some really exciting innovations in NFTs, in the future of blockchain, in quantum computing, and going to Mars. It's all really exciting stuff. But you know what? When you don't have clean water and you don't have electricity, that's where we have to start. And as Vivek says, we now have the exponential technologies to begin to address some of these problems. And he gives 3 examples. He talks about curing cancer at the genomic level. He talks about access to diagnostic testing in rural communities. He talks about plasma water to bring clean water to people and also to agriculture. So with me today, I also have 2 panelists who have some experience with global impact. We are joined today by Jim Chu, a first-time twin guest. He's a serial entrepreneur and the founder of Untapped Global. We'd love to learn more about that during this discussion. And we also have Kunal Sood, a longtime Twinian. He is a founder of the Novus Summit. He is an outreach ambassador for the United Nations. And he has a new project called We the Planet that's very exciting, and we hope to learn more about that as well. So we just listened to Vivek, and he covered an awful lot of topics. Is there anything that stood out to you that you agreed with or you disagreed with, or where should we start, panelists?
Well, I definitely would second, the idea that technology has the potential to solve so many of the world's problems, and also his implied second point that it's our responsibility to use that technology or take that opportunity and do it in a way that helps humanity for the future. But I think I'd go one step further and say it's really the role of innovators and entrepreneurs, like so many of the people that we've heard from, to figure out how to apply that technology in a way that actually works, the practical. Because oftentimes the technology can be there, but then the next step is, how do you make it commercially viable? How do you make it socially acceptable? How do you make it politically acceptable?
Right.
And those are oftentimes the challenges that stop technology from realizing its potential. And one of the things that I've learned so what we do at Untapped Global is we invest in small businesses in emerging markets in Africa and other places, and allow them to innovate, solve problems themselves, providing them the finance and the tools to do so. And I believe it's really the intersection of the two.
Okay.
It's the ability to understand at a very local level what the problems are, but then also understand what is offered by technology and the international community. And bringing those 2 things together is actually very, very hard, because oftentimes you have people sitting in Silicon Valley or Brooklyn who understand the technology and understand what's going on in the rest of the world, but don't understand at a very fundamental level what's happening on the ground.
Right.
And then on the other side, you have folks who understand the problem, but don't necessarily understand all the potential of what's out there.
Right. It sounds like a great idea, right? And I think about the clean cook stoves and how many times, someone in the United States created this new clean cook stove, and it sounded so wonderful, and it was going to burn cleaner, and it was going to improve indoor air quality. And they bring it over to Africa, and it takes like twice as long to cook the food. And the poor people on the ground using it said, I don't have this time, or the food didn't taste as good, but nobody thought about that, right? So there's the innovation and what's possible, and then there's the implementation and what people really want on the ground. And shouldn't those innovations be coming from whatever country is then going to use those products?
Exactly.
Right?
I think it's just so important to really understand the core basic problems first, and then figure out what technology solve those problems versus necessarily the other way around.
Started within the context, and then, yeah.
And as a very technology-driven society, economies, especially San Francisco, where I live, and places like where we are today, we think about technology and we get excited about it, and we should get excited about it.
Yep.
But then we should also think about, well, what are the basic problems that this can solve?
Right, right. And I see both of you as and Vivek as well, sort of bridge people, right? You live in Silicon Valley, but you're frequently in the countries where you work. And what countries are those?
So we work in all throughout sub-Saharan Africa, actually. So Kenya, Uganda, South Africa, Mali, a few other places as well. Most of our team is in Kenya and South Africa, but really one of our main goals is to create these connections, because at the end of the day, it's about connections between people. So if folks from San Francisco or New York or Paris and London are able to really meet and understand at a very basic level what's going on, how people live in places like the townships of Cape Town or Johannesburg, then they have more empathy, number one, but also have the ability to say, oh, well, gosh, I just saw this yesterday in terms of a new innovation. Maybe that might be able to help. And then it's the connections between the people that actually create the solutions. It can't be one or the other, in my view. It has to be that connection.
And you're providing the resources of the funding as well to make this happen, right?
My company is very specifically trying to figure out how to provide more financing to small businesses that are providing these basic services. And so one of the things that I've realized over the last decade of investing in emerging markets is there's a mass market out there. In fact, the World Bank says $5.2 trillion of small businesses that just can't get money. They're successful, everything works, they can't get the financing. And everyone knows this. But figuring out how to get financing to them is harder than one thinks. So we think we have a solution, and we're trying to really scale that so that we can really empower the next billion entrepreneurs.
And that's why your company is called Untapped, right? The untapped market, right? Great. So Kunal, I want to give you some space to have some comments about the video itself.
So I resonate with everything that was just said, but for me, personally speaking, coming from Silicon Valley, now in New York, I feel like we don't have an innovation problem or a technology problem, which you well stated. I feel here and now, we have a leadership problem. And once we solve for that leadership problem, then a lot of these other problems start to take a better form in shaping humanity. I feel like the technology itself can become masters of our universe. So we become slaves to technology, whether you're a billionaire or you're from the bottom of the pyramid. And I'm hoping we can reverse engineer that over the next decade, because if we don't, we're going to see what just happened happen at an exponential rate. These problems are not going away. They're exponentiating at a rate that we can't keep up with, because the technology we're developing is so ahead of us as human beings and what we can comprehend even. I feel like the most important thing here and now is unity, leadership, and the ability to not just solve for problems, but solve for the biggest problem, which is listening to the voices that are unheard. See, we touch wood, I'd say we're very blessed to sit down and pause it and talk about how we're going to solve people's problems. But the most important part of this is to look at the wealth on the ground and really start from a ground up approach. I fundamentally believe what Vivek is speaking to is starting on the ground. That's why he said, why India? We don't have a legacy to protect, because our legacy was kind of disrupted 400 years ago. And ever since then, we're a young country, and we're still trying to find our footing in the world. Even though we've advanced as an economy, we're not there yet. So we have that great opportunity, and hopefully we learn from our lessons of the past to do better and to be better for the future. That's why We the Planet is really, I've worked a lot alongside the United Nations, and I've had the gift of working along as a special advisor to the country of Palau. We launched, We the Planet at the UN in 2019, pre-pandemic. Our dream was to do this huge ocean summit, talk about water. There are two kinds of water. There's the water in the ocean, which is acidifying. So you can just imagine what that problem is. And then, of course, there's clean, potable water, which is like, again, Vivek said, we can either live into a Star Trek future or a Mad Max future. Both kind of seem a little scary to me, because Star Trek also had its set of challenges. But to me, I'm trying to figure out, what does the human future look like for us here and now? How do we go above and beyond we the people and start to serve we the planet, so that we serve something that's larger than ourselves, which is very important. We become very driven by who's on the Forbes list, and then we condemn them. It's a paradox,
Absolutely.
It's a huge paradox.
You love to hate them.
Yeah, I mean, you
hate to love them.
Exactly. And I sit in the middle, because I love moonshots.
Yeah.
And I also love Earth shots. There's space for both. You can't condemn the top 1% for exploring what's beyond their imagination because they have that possibility and they have that potential. We should do that.
And a lot of the technology that is created for that can also be used here on Earth as well.
Always.
So
The
it's-
military has the most amount of money, right? For example.
Where did the internet come from?
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
our-
I think we should start, or at least try to stop attacking those that have gone above and beyond human potential here and now, and start to honor them too for what they're doing, like Elon Musk. What he just did now has completely changed the game for humanity with Inspiration 4. I don't know if you remember that, but we've gone into space as civilians.
Yeah.
Right? Now we just have to focus, like Vivek said, on the ground
Mhm.
to create our own Inspiration 4 billion women, because I really believe in the power of women,
Yes.
to empower transforming our world for a better future right here on Earth.
I think it's easy to throw darts at certain characters, wherever they are. But I think it's more important to empower those that we don't see, to your point, right? So I think a lot of what's happening today, and one of the biggest problems today, in my view, is inequality in the world, whether that's inequality between countries, and we see this with the pandemic and the vaccine.
It's getting worse with
It's
the
getting
pandemic.
worse, exactly. And even within a country like the United States, inequality is growing. And so one reaction can be, let's pull the other folks down. And I worked 10 years in Haiti, and Haitians will say, well, our biggest problem as Haitians is that when one crab starts to crawl out of the basket, all the other crabs start to pull them down. And that is very true, by the way, culturally. And not to say that the rich can't do more for be more globally responsible, but we should be thinking about how to empower everybody else as well, not just throw darts at those folks. And I think a lot of that is about economic empowerment, about giving the opportunity, about creating the opportunity, so that every entrepreneur, every person has the potential to be an Elon Musk.
And are you working towards that? I mean, can an individual right now help fund one of your entrepreneurs?
So our platform that we're creating is, part of this is part of the discussion that we had earlier was about impact investing, and impact
Which
investing
is kind of big right now, and it's
kind of
very
big.
broad.
It's very broad,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of folks think about, oh yes, impact investing, that's for rich people. That's that's what Bill Gates does, or at least somebody who's made it in the world. We should all be impact investors. And so what we've created is a investment platform which we're launching next year, that will allow anybody to invest in entrepreneurs in emerging markets, and do it in a way that's easy, that's safe, that's rewarding financially and emotionally for them. Because we need to raise awareness that this is a global world. This isn't about just helping people in my neighborhood, but by making everybody wealthier, then we're going to create a better future for all of us.
Yeah.
Well, I would resonate with a lot of what he said. Today's next generation don't want to be called philanthropists.
Right.
In fact, there was something called high impact philanthropy, which is alongside, what we would consider impact investing. Most next geners, whether they're Rockefellers or, the Gates family, they all want to be impact investors. And the good news about that is, like you said, it levels a playing field and democratizes that idea. And we can step up to all be impact entrepreneurs, investors, innovators, whichever destination that you choose, as long as impact drives you as your massive transformative purpose, and you make that the seat of your soul, right? And you drive towards some positive impact, it doesn't matter if you're a billionaire in the bank or not. What matters most here and now is if you can impact 1 billion lives. If someone impacts 1 billion lives to me, I will go to their table any day versus a person that's just made $1 billion. Because to me, that is old world money.
Absolutely the new definition of billionaire.
Right. Meaning,
Impact
and I'm
billion.
not taking away from the billionaire who's made $1 billion. There's a
Absolutely
lot of hard work there.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that today we need more. We need a double or even a quadruple, bottom line. We need to heal our world. We need to help our world. We need to heal our people and help our people. And we need to be there for each other. We have to have each other's backs.
And you know, they say that the last stop on the way to happiness is to be of service.
Yeah.
And I do think that people are looking for meaning, and millennials know that earlier than we do.
For sure.
You know, we think that if you're successful and you drive a nice car and have a nice house, that's meaning. And you get there and you're like, oh, I still feel a little bit empty, right? And so something like this, you know, solving these big problems, being part of that is, you know, that's can kind of serve that role.
Actually, you used a word which is very important: empathy. Gen Z has natural empathy, almost so much so because they're living into a digital world. They have two personas. They have a digital persona and a real persona. So for us as, you know, elders, the old guard,
we are are we the elders already? Oh my
elders,
God.
old guard. I consider myself, my greatest gift is to be their protector and guardian. If we can guard and protect our next generation with empathy, with compassion, and teach them how to have moral courage, I think that will be very powerful for them.
Seconding one thing you said, and then going beyond that a bit, you know, empathy is extremely important. I do think that technology these days is actually bringing more opportunity to be empathetic.
Yes.
Because the connections between people across borders and across social divides is easier to cross these days than it was in my generation. You know, you have to get on a plane and you go somewhere and talk. The folks that I worked with in Haiti connected with me immediately on Facebook, where I was looking at what their family was doing, they were looking at what my family was doing immediately. And that creates not just empathy, but at least an ability to relate and understand, oh, they're just like me, which is something that is really hard to do, but has to happen before we can do anything.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. You heard it, guys. Are we going to create a future that looks like Star Trek, Mad Max, or a human future?
Or something better than both.
Or something better than both.
I think we can, and we will.
And here at Twin, we love Earth shots and we love moon shots. They're all good. Thank you so much, Jim and Kunal. There you have it. We just covered global impact beyond. Hope those at home were inspired and learned something today. In our next session, we go in search of genius.